My name's Frank, and here's something a lot of people won't say out loud. Sometimes being a stepfather is a thankless job. That might sound harsh, but anyone who's done the work knows exactly what those words feel like sitting in your chest, showing up with time, money, energy, patience, and love, and watching it get measured against someone else's DNA, like effort, doesn't count unless it comes from blood. You try to fill a space left by someone else. You tell yourself consistency and care will be enough, that if you stand in the doorway day after day, the house will eventually see you as its own. Sometimes it doesn't. I learned that the loudest way a man can learn it on Christmas night, at the dinner table, surrounded by family. When I stood up, kept my voice calm, and made decisions that would rearrange the way everyone at that table thought about me. When I met Sophia, years before that Christmas, she struck me as ambitious and self-possessed, the kind of woman who had learned to steer her own days without waiting for anyone's permission. She didn't come with confessions on the first date. She didn't present a case file. She showed up like most of us do, single, independent, trying to figure life out a step at a time. We went out, slow at first, then steady. I fell for her the way you fall when there's more to admire than to fix. What I didn't know then was that Sophia was already a mother. Her daughter, Carrara, was 4 and living in another city with Sophia's parents. When I found out, I felt the jolt anyone would feel. Then the quieter, heavier thing underneath it, responsibility arriving at the door with big eyes and no say in how it got here. Sophia told me about the man she'd loved as a teenager, the one who denied the pregnancy until there wasn't anything left to deny, the one whose name kept showing up near trouble, not near effort. She had watched enough to decide she didn't want that kind of man around her daughter, not if she could help it. I listened. I didn't see baggage. I saw a woman who'd been forced to grow fast, and a little girl who didn't get to pick any of the adults in her story. I told Sophia that if we were serious, I wouldn't just be with her. I'd be there for her child too. I meant it. I didn't yet understand the edges of that promise, but I meant it. After we married, I asked if we could bring Carrara home to live with us. Sophia thought about it, then agreed. We did the paperwork, made the calls, drove the miles, and when a small suitcase landed by our front door, I told myself out loud that this house had 2 daughters, now one by blood and one by choice, and that my behavior wouldn't teach them the difference. Those early days were good. It was our first stretch as a family, and I poured myself into fatherhood with both hands. Walks to school, homework help, Saturday pancakes, bedtime stories that ran long because the point wasn't the plot. It was presence. 2 years later, Sophia and I had a child together, a little girl with her mother's eyes, and a stare that landed right on my softest parts. Some people say that's when my heart would divide. I decided instead it would double. Birthdays, bedtime, report cards, doctor visits, school pickups. Both girls got the same dad every time. We weren't rich, but we were steady enough to plan. I've always believed time moves faster than your budget thinks it will. College isn't a far-off word. It's a bill that shows up while you're still saying, "We've got time." So I opened 2 college funds, one for each daughter. 2 separate accounts. Same amount every month, as much as I could manage without breaking the rest. I didn't tell Sophia. I wasn't hiding it to be clever. I just wanted the discipline to be quiet, consistent, and my responsibility. Interest and repetition did the thing they always do. The numbers grew slowly, then noticeably. When adolescence found our doorstep, it found it through Carrara first. The little girl who used to sprint to the door when my keys hit the lock stopped running, then stopped looking up. At first, I told myself what all parents say: teenagers molt. It's how they grow. Be steady. Be kind. Don't take the weather personally. Then I found out the reason had a name. She had been talking to her biological father. I didn't hear it from her. The truth came sideways. When I asked Sophia, she said he'd gotten her number and reached out. He wanted to be part of his daughter's life again. He wanted a relationship. I asked why no one had told me, why the man who'd been bedtime and breakfast for a decade was the last to know. Sophia said she didn't feel it was her place to say no, that he was still her father, and maybe it would help for them to connect. I felt like a piece of furniture in my own house, useful until the original owner called. I nodded and left the room. From then on, the air changed a few degrees colder. I refused to match it. I kept doing what I'd always done, paying attention, showing up, scheduling tutors, signing permission slips, lifting the weight of ordinary days. For her 17th birthday, I thought for weeks about the right gift. I landed on a brand new Honda Civic safe, dependable, affordable to insure and repair. Silver, clean, titled, and insured in her name. She looked at it and her face fell like I'd handed her a second-hand apology. "Where's the Benz?" she asked. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Months earlier, she'd shown me a Mercedes-Benz GLC 300 on her phone and said that was her dream car. I never imagined she meant I should buy it for a teenager about to leave for college. I explained maintenance costs, insurance, the way a Civic would carry her farther with fewer breakdowns than a dream built on debt. I told her I'd test-driven it. It felt right. None of it mattered. A grudge took root that day and found water everywhere. I told Sophia the reaction hurt. She shrugged. "She's a teenager," she said. "Don't let it bother you." Then came the late nights, the check-ins that turned into arguments. "Please let us know where you are," I said. "It's not safe out there." "You're always trying to control my life," she shot back and walked out. I mentioned the crowd she'd started orbiting, a few boys with a reputation I didn't want near my daughter's name. "Be careful who you're with," I said. "Not everyone has good intentions." She gave me the line that strips a decade in a sentence. "Why do you even care? You're not even my real father." Later that week, when she came home at 1 a.m. after lying about where she'd be, I confronted her quietly in the kitchen. "Even my real father doesn't act like you," she said. "You're doing too much for a stepfather." Something cracked. Sophia said nothing. No correction. No, that's out of line. Just silence. A silence that said I'd been fighting for a family by myself. Time did what it always does. It carried her off to college. I hoped distance would turn her around toward the man who'd stood in the doorway for her since she was 4. It didn't. When Christmas came and she came home, I tried one more small bridge. She'd mentioned a designer bag once in passing. I tracked it down, bought it, wrapped it, and wrote a card. I signed it Dad, because that's what I had been, whatever anyone wanted to call it. Dinner started like a postcard. Good food, relaxed voices, shared jokes, dishes passing hand to hand. For a little stretch, it felt like before. Then Sophia's younger sister smiled, looked at both girls, and said, "You two are lucky to have such a great dad." I didn't need thanks. I didn't expect speeches. What came next still felt like a blade. Carrara snorted, loud, dismissive, without lifting her eyes from her plate. "Some people aren't worth calling Dad," she said. Silence sat down with us. Sophia stared at her lap. Our younger daughter looked from her sister to me, like she'd just watched someone turn out the lights. I smiled so I wouldn't do anything else. I stood, walked to the tree, picked up the box with the bag inside, and tucked it under my arm. Then I looked at the girl I'd raised and said evenly, "Don't touch any of the gifts I gave you over the years, including the car." I added, "And I just canceled your college fund. Good luck." I left the room and closed the door behind me. She thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. That night, I logged into the account and moved every $120 out of her fund and into her younger sister's. I blocked her on everything, not because I wanted to win a fight, but because I had nothing left to say. If she wanted answers, she could ask her mother why she watched this become necessary. By morning, she'd packed and left for her biological father's house. On her way out, she gave people the list-controlling, manipulative, trying too hard to be something I wasn't. I didn't respond. The part of me that worried, that stayed up waiting for the sound of keys in the door, went quiet. Sophia didn't speak for a few days. Tension moved in and slept where conversation used to. Then she tried guilt. "You can't give up on her," she said. "She gave up on me first," I answered. "I finally heard her." She pushed. What kind of example was I setting? What kind of father turns his back? I looked at the woman I loved and said, "Do you want to join her? Because I've watched you stand quiet when you should speak. I've watched you let her disrespect me in front of you. You left me alone in this house long before she did." She said nothing. 6 months went by. No calls, no messages that found me, no explanation I hadn't already heard between the lines. One afternoon, my little girl, our younger daughter, came to the edge of the couch and stood there with something careful on her face. "Dad," she said, "can you let my sister come home?" I didn't send her away, I told her. The door was always open. Sophia asked too later. Same question, same tone, now that silence wasn't solving anything. "She can stay here," I said, "but I'm done being her father." A few days later, the front door opened, and the girl I'd raised walked in carrying months of regret in her shoulders. She asked to talk. We sat. She apologized, said she'd called, messaged, tried every way in. I'd blocked her everywhere. She cried while admitting she'd made a mistake. I listened. I didn't fold. "You can stay," I said, "but I won't be responsible for you. You burned that bridge. Disrespect me again and you'll be gone for good." No argument, no backtalk, just a nod from someone who'd finally felt the difference between a man who chose to love her and a man who shared her DNA. Eventually, I learned what those months had looked like. Life with her father wasn't what she'd mythologized. He didn't have the means or the structure I'd built for years. His wife saw my stepdaughter as an extra bill, not a blessing. Nagging, keeping score, reminding her she was one more mouth in a house that wasn't keeping up as it was. She went from a room of her own, a reliable car, and a man who made time like it was his job, to a place where she was an inconvenience with a suitcase. I never said I told you so, but I overheard a phone call once. She didn't know I was nearby. Her voice was low and tired when she said, "I saw hell over there." I understood then that she'd lived the life she thought she wanted and found out it didn't look like the story she'd been telling herself. Today, she's back under the same roof. She's not back in my heart. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. I haven't returned anything I took back. The car is off limits. The fund is gone. Some lines don't fade just because time passes over them. Could it change someday? Maybe. I'm not made of stone. But if there's a future, it'll be one she builds with accountability, not expectation. Until then, she'll have a roof here and the rules that come with it. Her future? She'll have to make that without the things I set aside, at least for now. If any of this sounds familiar, or even just close enough to ring the bell in your own chest, tell me what you think. What would you have done? Have you been here? Maybe not exactly here, but somewhere on the same road. Drop your thoughts. I read everyone. Let's talk.